Yeah, what's up guys? Inco here with a new build video, and this is for my Hexblast Ignite. We're going to be updating it to 3.19. I'm using absolutely like day one gear. Just finished doing this on stream, gearing the character. I started with all level gems and just leveled them up, so we're around like level 16 gems for the most part. Nothing expensive here, and two key items that we actually can't use. One that gives us insane damage, going to be Singularity, and another, the shield, that gets us attack and spell block, which is pretty insane. We'll talk about both the items when we get to the POP portion. And just a pyre, two pyres, amulet with some life, a resist, doubt multi, not even anointed, which you could anoint arsonist, is very cheap. That's like the budget anoint. But obviously defenses aren't anything special because we're not using the shield, which does give a lot. We'll get to that. But even with all that, like level 16 gems and stuff, we're able to do red maps. I'll go ahead and show. And this is absolute like bare bones. You invested nothing into this build. Day one, literally. Like tabula, all that stuff. We'll talk about other stuff too with the build. No exposure, no thanks. Avoid ailments is not fun. This one's fine, just Fizz, Reflect, Turbo, Vulnerability, Totems, Meme. Might die, but, you know. We will be much tankier on the actual patch because of the shield we'll talk about, especially. So the playstyle, you're just going around, you're casting your curse, flammability. You don't need to wait for the Doom Blast to go off, or Doomsday to go off, sorry. You literally just curse and use your Hexblast. And as you can see with, you know, being on absolute garbage gear, still clearing the map. Boss, like I said, we're obviously still pretty squishy, but considering the gear we are in, I would say that's very respectable. And like level 16 gems in that. If you want to be faster, you can definitely get in a shield charge, faster attacks. But that either requires you to sacrifice an aura, which you probably could do clarity. And then you could still keep Flame Surge, or sorry, Flame Dash, Arcane Surge. Flame Surge also I'm not really sold on, because you got to kind of have the boss stand still, which, to be realistic, it's not really happening like 90% of the time. So, and definitely drop that if you want. We don't die to the detonate dead. But yeah, that's the map there. Tier 16 map, absolute trash gear, like level 16 gems. Again, we'll look at the gear real quick, and then we'll go over the stuff in POB. Obviously, this would be wind screams. Faded versions are gone. Basically the same boots. It's just going to be wind screams now. But these two slots will be different. So we'll actually hop over to POB here, and we will talk about the stuff. So, in the POB here, this is early, so this is starting. Singularity is going to be our weapon of choice. It got buffed, and this is actually very nice. So this is a mid-roll, obviously. But if you compare it to like the wand we have, this is literally all we care about on the wand we have. +1 chaos for +1 to Hexblast, and crafted fire dot multi, which you can get higher, you know, through rolls and that. But as you can see, Singularity gives us 120,000 more Ignite DPS. So that is very nice for a 62 weapon that's pretty common, and it's going to be cheap. Also, you get hindered. Nothing to scoff at. Reduced movement speed. What I want to talk about that's really good and definitely worth using over a +1 chaos shield or like some damage. This shield is insane. As you can see, I mean, we're 1% off block chance cap, but we're pretty much spell block and block chance capped. So this shield gives glancing blows, which normally there's a downside to glancing blows that you take 65% of damage from blocked hits. This shield, though, damage taken from blocked hits cannot bypass energy shield. That means even if your energy shield is depleted, when you take a blocked hit, or when you get hit and you block something, even if you have no energy shield, you're not taking any of that damage. This shield is actually insane. And it gives so much armor and ES. And then damage taken from unblocked hits always bypass energy shield. Not a big deal. We have Vitality, which is, I believe, low level in the POB right now. And then also this node while mapping is very nice. So obviously the enemies you kill are always cursed. So you're recovering 2% of life with that. And then when you're looking at the POB, you want to make sure that you're at the right portion of the build. One more key thing to talk about actually before I go forward. Vixen's gloves. So, Vixens. You'll see I have Flammability, which is my main curse, and this is used to trigger Impending Doom and hence Doom Blast. When we remove a curse from Hexblast, Doom Blast is then triggered, which also would trigger Combustion, and we also have Combustion on Wave of Conviction in the starting setup in that. So, you want to make sure that you have enough mana. So Punishment is costing 26. Elemental Weakness is costing 26. That means when we cast a curse, it's adding basically 52 mana cost on top of that because you need enough mana to cast those curses also when you cast Flammability, which Flammability costs 50 here. So that means that you need 102 mana, as you'll see. Goes down like that. You want to make sure that you have enough unreserved mana so you can do that. I remember when I first made my Hexblast guide, I had a lot of questions with that. So I really want to focus on, that you guys know that. Don't reserve too much mana. You can either like completely drop Clarity if you want, or even Vitality. Change it to a level if you want, anything like that. But definitely be mindful of that, because if you're not doing that, you're going to be missing a lot of damage. And Eye of Malice, very important when you're on the Elementalist spec. Because the line there, nearby enemies have 50% increased fire and cold resistance. That works when they're negative too. And because we're applying so much exposure and decreasing their resistances with elemental weakness and flammability, that means that negative amount is then doubled. So it makes them take even more damage from lowering their resistances even further. This helmet is very nice. Very sleeper for like Elementalist and, casting the curses with all the exposure we get through, Wave of Conviction, Mastermind of Discord, and our curses, of course. And now we can hop back over to the POB. So, with the POB, when you're looking at it, make sure that you have the right skills selected. So this is for like, starting with the Elementalist. One thing that's going to be up in the air, so we kind of already covered all the early stuff. That was the build, early stuff, which you just seen with the showcase. Again, level like 16 gems in that. Cleared a T16 map, no problem. And we were missing major defenses and damages because we unfortunately can't use Singularity and Emperor's Vigilance right now, as they are not out. But when we move to mid-Elementalist, you want to make sure that this is your staff transition. So this is where you start taking the staff nodes. And then you'd be in mid-Elementalist. So then this is your tree. This is when you start to invest a little bit more money. But the only real big investment here, okay, we'll say Martyr of Innocence for now. The Covenant. So, two really big chests for this build. The Covenant was already used. The Covenant got buffed. It is now level 29 added chaos, which is absolutely insane. To put it in some perspective, if you look at added chaos damage at 29, 377 to 565 added chaos damage. When you look at awakened added chaos at level 6, it is 195 to 293. Granted, the +1 is really big, especially for Hexblast too. But this is like double. 29 added chaos from the chest. It's insane. So don't really know the price of it. And then Dialas. Dialas is another absolutely insane chest. Dialas is just... This chest is going to be insane for corrupting because... So this works like a tabula. Think of it like that. And the red sockets in there give +2 to level. And then the green sockets in there give +30 quality. So you want to have a red socket for where you socket your Hexblast. And that's going to give it +2 levels. But where this chest becomes even more crazy is you can double corrupt these. So you can get like +1, +2 AoE, +2 duration. You know, stuff on top of that that's even further. So I would say stay in a tabula, but depending on the price of covenants and that, and I mean, you can see it's nothing to scoff at the damage from going, you know, a tabula to a covenant. 700k ignite DPS. That is pretty substantial. So alternatively, you can use a Dialas, and you know, whatever colors you end up getting, the biggest one that you want is, because obviously you're not going to have like an Empower early, but giving levels to Empower would also be big. But mostly, for most of these going through with quality, quality is going to be big for them, giving them quality. I mean, even if you go through here and setting it to, you know, 20 quality, you see how much these are all adding. These support gems, they're all adding like 40,000 damage. And same thing eventually being in like divergent Hexblast and that. So ideally, you would want red for Hexblast, and then the rest of your gems, you'd be looking at like, you know, your quality to boost them in that. Unless there's a threshold that you hit on them. So you either, depending on the price, even a 5-link covenant is better than a tabula. But really anything that gives defenses, if you want to go damage, covenant's insane. If you want to, you know, go Gamba and even more damage, Dialas is insane. And outside of that, Spore Guard is actually very, very good. It gives us a free anoint. A lot of good defenses, armor and ES. Or you can just use a rare chest in that. But I'll leave this here. Just know, can't really predict the prices of how it's going to be, but Dialas and Covenant are both tier 4 items. They're just normally hidden on loot filters. So while I do think they'll be fairly expensive early on in League, the only one I see kind of staying a decent amount is Dialas because double corruption potential with it. Covenant is very nice for early and a lot of poison builds, which is definitely hype around poison builds in this league. So unless you get lucky, probably just opt for a rare chest or, like I said, Spore Guard moving forward. And then from here, you would actually have the transition to Occultist. Now, this is where the build gets really fun because you no longer have to curse enemies while you're going through maps like trash because you have a Blasphemy curse. So I have it all in the notes for the transition, but I recommend at least a armor swap of Spore Guard or an additional curse chest, a Solstice Vigil, Blizzard Crown, and Black Flame to transition into Occultist. And then this is your setup, and same thing. You want to swap the tree to mid Occultist. Obviously, we gain a lot more damage because we are taking advantage of Black Flame, which turns our damage into Chaos. And we also have to change these skills, which is kind of annoying, but just the way it is. So that's why the damage looked a little weird. So now you have to enable all the mid Occultists. Go through, enable these. And then here I'm talking about like the tech with Divine Blessing. If you want, you can opt for an additional, 50% aura. Personally, I find Purity of Elements to be more comfortable. And actually, when I played this build, I didn't even use Malevolence. But if you want to go for maximum potential damage, let me put this to the right one. If you want to go to maximum potential damage, then Malevolence is the way, because obviously you can get a Malevolence Watcher's Eye. That's going to add a lot of damage. But Purity of Elements is so cozy with the build, and your damage is already really nice, that it's really not needed. So that is entirely up to you. And another thing here I will mention is you can swap Ignite Proliferation. Notice these gems are all level 1, just like normal. You can swap Ignite Proliferation once you have a Fan the Flames cluster jewel. And all of this is like mentioned in the notes. Just make sure that you're selecting the right things as you go through. And here we have Searing Heat Anointed on Spore Guard. And then we have Dirty Techniques on Solstice Vigil. And we just have like basic crafted, some essence stuff, just life on the helmet, nothing really. Martyr. And a couple of my friends, same thing. They went through, cleared all the game, all the content with just this setup using Martyr. By no means do you have to go to the Giga setup, which is where you move into a Cane of Kulamak. And then obviously there's like the endgame gems. But this is the mid. I mean, you're looking at a 4 million Ignite. Assuming like everything in here is set up right. Which, assuming it is. I don't have max hex. Yeah. But where the build gets really crazy now, when we go into the endgame Occultist version. So, change the endgame Occultist. Disable all of these. Enable all of this. Oh, I had Blight disabled there too. Okay, so yeah, I have Blight disabled here too. Obviously, having your Vol Blight adds more damage. And then let me make sure I have the right one selected. And I think the damage is off a little bit here, actually. Why is that? Oh, right. This needs to be 50 now. There we go. Because you move into a Essence Crafted Amulet with Hexes have plus 10 to Max Doom. Inherently, Max Doom is 30 by default. We get 10 more from Skittering Runes, which makes it 40. And then 10 from the Amulet, the Essence mod, which makes it 50. And now we are at an Ignite DPS of 15.5 million. Not including like our debuffs and that. And that's pretty insane. But where this league, it can get even more crazy is if you actually take your Amulet and you use it in the Kalandra mechanic. If you are to double the Essence mod to 20, do that for a second here. So right now we're 15.5 million, and this would take us up to 60 max Doom. That takes us up to 18 million. Which, that is, for one thing, a big boost of damage. And in an ideal world, you know, you would hit the +2 also, or like double your damage over time multiplier, or fire damage over time multiplier if you had the influence on it. But the big thing, and like being realistic, that you'd want to hit is that Max Doom. Because that is a lot of damage to be added there. Change that back. And the endgame, we just have like basic stuff through here. You add the resist where you need and where you please to cap your resistances. That's why the resistances look so wonky. That way people aren't looking specifically for, you know, certain gear, certain resistances. I like to do my POBs where you just put your resistances where you need them and fit them in. And one thing I will mention with the chest too, I definitely do recommend armor and evasion. So you get a bunch of armor. You can like face tank all those big fizz hits in that. But there are some options. Like I said, Dialis is really good. Covenant if you get a good double corrupt technically. But there's even more defensive options. Like we're talking Lightning Coil is actually pretty insane for reduced damage. And if you really wanted to like, you know, ignore those big hits and that, this is definitely an option. You would have to get an additional curse. Your best bet would probably be change your anoint, because pathing over here for Whispers of Doom, I really wouldn't recommend it. But if you really want to be tanky, that is definitely an option there. And the block, we're decent here. You don't want to take Glancing Blows, because That is a big downside of taking 60% damage from blocked hits. And that's also why that shield is so insane. That downside of glancing blows is like completely ignored. But yeah, this build, I played it 3.16 and 3.17. Like when all's amulets are actually worth something. I killed a lot of alls with it. All the endgame bosses and that had no problems. You don't even need Kana Kulamak. And if you're not using Kana Kulamak, if you're still using Martyr, you do have to recap your ignite chance, because this Kana Kulamak is giving a lot of chance to ignite. So you just have to like change some nodes around, get ignite chance, maybe some clusters, maybe on some jewels, some ignite chance and like that. But if you do that, you also have the option to just go Giga DPS if you want with like Dialas or the Covenant, which is also really good. Another thing to mention early on, if you want, and like all this stuff is in the notes, the same thing. If you want to use Barracks Respite or Aberrus Hooves or Fan the Flames, the big two that really brick it, Aberrus Hooves and Barracks Respite, don't use Ignite Proliferation with them because it ruins the chain, having two sources of Ignite Proliferation, I guess. So instead of Ignite Proliferation, you want to use Inspiration. Gives good damage and also reduces mana cost, which is also nice. But yeah, all in all, build's very nice. I mean, if you want to look at it like that, technically it got buffed because of, you know, like all the builds getting nerfed and stuff. But also you can take this mastery. You either have it so... Did they change this to 10%? I actually had no idea about that. It's 15% in game right now, right? Yeah. Huh. Anyway, you can take this node or the damage one if you want extra damage. Completely up to you. And same thing with the 50% auras I also mentioned. The same idea. It's up to you what 50% you want to take. Obviously, we're using the Blasphemy temp chains. You could also do Enfeeble if you want. Temp chain is just really cozy. And that makes it so that the build is a one-button build. So you don't have to curse. You would then only be cursing when you're at bosses or real tanky targets like, you know, maybe 4 mod, Arch Nemesis mods and that. So for Hexblast to trigger, you actually don't need the Doom on them, which is gained through Doomsday, waiting for the curse when you self-cast it. Blasphemy curses and like curses basically casted as an aura do not gain Doom, so they're at 0. But that'll still proc Hexblast, and on top of that, Doom Blast from Impending Doom. So that is why it becomes a one-button build when you have a Blasphemy curse. And there's definitely some crazy potential with this, with the mirroring stuff. It'll be really interesting. You can get a lot of damage. Like even these mods like this, the damage over time multipliers and the dealing damage faster, those are insane. And the big one with the amulet is definitely doubling that Doom. That is going to increase your damage an insane amount. But big thing I want to highlight, just when you're going through, make sure you're looking at the right tree. I know it can be kind of annoying, but make sure you're looking at the right tree with the right skills. So like this is obviously the wrong skill. You don't want this one. And you have to go through and, you know, disable the ones for whichever point of the build you're at, whether that be starting with the Elementalist, starting to go into the Occultist, or going into the end version of the Occultist. And you have to come in and enable them. And then you'll want to make sure that you have the right one selected over here for your skill, so you see the accurate DPS in that. If you're over Doom on Hex, it automatically corrects it. Like we don't have 50 anymore because we don't have the amulet. But if I put 40, it's the same thing because it knows that we can't get 50 Doom. And same thing here. The big thing that I'm just really surprised about is this shield. I haven't seen it talked about too much, but it's really disgusting. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it. But the fact that all the hits you block, you're basically just not taking damage now, or it depletes your energy shield, is insane. And then if you don't block a hit, It bypasses energy shield. Not that big of a deal. So I think this shield is going to be insane to start with. And Singularity is very nice, giving us extra hinder on top of our defensive layers. And, you know, obviously in a tabular, we still have some really nice defenses with absolute trash starter gear. Same thing with this. These are just showing, you know, whatever gloves you can get into, you get Vixens. Whatever you can get into, you get Wind Screams. Same thing. There are no more Wind Shrieks anymore. There are Wind Screams. Just make sure that. And I have all the notes in here for basically leveling, transitioning the stuff. I do personally recommend keeping Purity of Elements, but if you do want to push the build for as much damage, Malevolence is definitely the way. Purity of Elements is just very cozy, especially leveling. That's why I recommend using Purity, but I have it in the notes if you want to push that damage. The Watcher's Eye, obviously, with Malevolence, absolutely insane. You know, you would look at a damage over time multiplier and a ailment faster. Oops, I clicked the wrong one. Here, ailment steal damage faster. You'd be looking at, wait, what happened to this? You'd be looking at one with this. Dot multi and damaging elements inflict deal damage faster. We just look for a second here. If I tick Malevolence, and if we add this to the build, I don't have a jewel slot. Let me do that real quick. And then if we put this Watcher's Eye, you see, like, this is bad rolled, but even then, where this is the starter version, where we have 726,000 Ignite DPS, this is adding 160,000. Obviously, in the endgame version, this is absolutely insane. But again, you then lose being ailment immune, so it is a trade-off. But if you really want to push that damage, that is definitely there. You would just have to be ailment immune, whether it be through Flash or other reasons. But yeah, this is the update to my Hexblast Ignite. Played through with testing it, and like we just showed there with the character, like level 16 gems in that, cleared a T16 map. I think that's really good. Flasks are, you know, you can use whatever you want. I do recommend a mana flask. I think it's really nice. Or you can also get points here and help with the mana cost. But I just like an enduring mana flask. I think it helps a lot. Flame Surge is another thing that it's up to you if you want to keep it. I think it's kind of bait. 9 out of 10 times the boss is gonna, you know, move out of the stuff. But hey, for stationary bosses like, you know, Totem and like a tool maps and that, it's pretty cool. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, guys. I think I have pretty much everything laid out here. I'm very excited to see the Singularity and the Emperor's Vigilance on this build. I'm still unsure what I'm going to start with. I also updated my LS Poison build, but these are both looking to be very strong starters. I can definitely recommend both of these. I mean, they're tried and true. I've league started with both of them twice. So yeah, that's going to be your update for this. I'll have the POB in the description. Same thing, like I said, just make sure when you're leveling the build, make sure you have the right tree selected when you're going through doing it, you know, whatever part of the build you're at. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy the build. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything you want to see. Till then, hope you guys have a good time in Lake of Kalandra, and I'll see you guys around. Take care.